Well, hello, dollies, Heidi ho, and welcome to Into the Darkness, the show where we talk about the horror genre in all its many, many forms, be that film, be it television, be it games, be it music. And here we are with episode number 6, which is Bride of Chucky. We have previously been doing the other films in the Child's Play franchise, and now here we are at the 4th film. Here to talk Bride of Chucky with me is my friend till the end and my co-host, Sarah Lynham. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Heidi ho! It's so cool to be back. I honestly can't even believe that we're at episode 6 already. How has that happened?
I know, isn't that crazy?
This year is already zooming by. It's absolutely wild. And I think today is officially the day that we're recording. Is the Chinese New Year. So happy New Year! Happy
Lunar New Year, yes, and the year of the horse. So,
yes,
happy
to
New
that.
Year.
They say that red is a lucky color, so that's why I'm drinking red wine. And also, we're filming in the evening, just so you know. So
yes,
you're not wondering why.
Why we
both
have not got a coffee on us today, which we normally do have. We haven't got our lovely attractive mugs for you, but you've got a cool skull goblet, glass.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, this is a really interesting part of the conversation. So
that's incentive to go and find the video version. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on our website. You can actually get it on Spotify as well.
Oh, amazing. How good is that? So here we are with episode 6. And as I just mentioned, we've so far done the first film in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. We've done The Witch, the Robert Eggers film. And now we've decided to basically work our way through the Chucky / Child's Play franchise. And I think we've got a reasonably good idea where we're going after that. But if we haven't already spoiled it, we'll leave that till later episodes. We also had, this is actually our 3rd episode in as many weeks, because last week we had a bonus episode of Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and eventually. And next month we'll also be doing another Friday the 13th film for Friday the 13th of March. So, just before we get into the podcast proper, and we start talking everything Bride of Chucky, which I know we're both absolutely desperate to do, I thought we'd do just a little bit of horror news, but we focused quite heavily so far on film. And Sony recently had its State of Play last Thursday, was it?
That sounds right, yeah. Last
Thursday, yes. And there were some really cool horror announcements during that State of Play, and I just thought we'd quickly have a little talk about those. One of them being the 40th anniversary of the Castlevania series, and a new announcement for the first game in quite some time, and the beginning, I think, of a relaunch of Castlevania, much like Konami did a couple of years ago with Silent Hill. And that is with what looks to be a Metroidvania, a Castlevania Belmont's Curse, which looks good. It looks like what you'd sort of want from a retro-style Castlevania game.
Yeah, and I guess like they coined part of the name of Metroidvania, right? So Metroid because of the Metroid games and Vania because of Castlevania.
Absolutely.
So it's cool that they're sticking with what was so good about it in the first place. Although, that being said, I never played the original games, but I knew about the universe and have loved watching the animated shows that came out in recent years. Like, they've been incredible. So yeah, I'm terrified of Metroidvania style games, but I will give it a whirl because it does look really cool.
It does look really cool, and do you know, I didn't have the relationship with the Castlevania games that I think people that had Nintendo consoles had, because I grew up we were a Sega household, and we had the Mega Drive, so all of those early Castlevania games I didn't really get to play until more recently when I played them. But there was one Castlevania game on Mega Drive, which was in the UK released as Castlevania The Next Generation, but its actual name, I think, is Castlevania Bloodlines. And I really loved that game, and I probably still think it's the best Castlevania, even though that seems like I played it first. So I think
has that nostalgia value.
It really does, yeah. But it's really, really fun. And so really excited new Castlevania stuff. And speaking of Konami and speaking of Silent Hill, we got the reveal trailer. We knew it was coming, but this is where we actually saw some footage for it. We saw Silent Hill Downfall, which is technically speaking, the fourth new Silent Hill game since the sort of rebirth that Konami have given Silent Hill, but the third long game, the third full game. And excitingly, it's been revealed that it takes place in Scotland, so we're going to have a reasonably local-based Silent Hill game, which is so exciting, and that trailer looks amazing, right?
Oh, it looks incredible. I think there's something about like the that sort of part of like Scotland that just has a bit of an eerie vibe anyway, and the sort of like seaside town kind of creepiness when it's not the height of summer, the sort of like grey hue that is over that part of the country anyway. It just it already has the vibe, and also I loved the little moment of there's like a sheet or a cloth or something that's over the sign name, and you can see the S. So obviously it's like, kind of giving this kind of nice connection to Silent Hill, but then it reveals that it's Saint Amelia. I thought that was really nice, and I just think it looks really creepy, really eerie. I mean, the Silent Hill games are all absolutely terrifying, really and I can tell that this one's going to be just as good. Really looking forward to it. Did we get a release date? I can't remember.
No release date yet, but Konami have said that they're aiming for a new Silent Hill game every year now, which is just ludicrous because we have gone an enormous amount of time since Silent Hill Downpour. The only sort of hint that there might be some life left in the franchise really was when the Silent Hill chapter came into Dead by Daylight. And then all of a sudden, after all of these years of everyone being desperate for new Silent Hill, not only are we getting it, but we're getting one a year. And so far, in terms of the two full-length games released, we've got two absolutely brilliant games in Silent Hill 2 Remake and Silent Hill F. And they're both wonderful. So, yeah.
Spoiled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and of course, as I spoke about in in episode 5, we did have Return to Silent Hill based on Silent Hill 2 movie that just came out, which is pretty bad. It's pretty bad, but I don't think anyone was particularly optimistic about it. And hey ho, Silent Hill 2 still exists, and it's still a masterpiece whether you're playing the original or you're playing the remake. They're both brilliant. The next one I wanted to speak about from the state of play, I guess it's more horror adjacent, really, but we're going to talk about it because I'm going to say what it is, Sarah, and you're going to say, oh yeah, we definitely need to talk about that. And that's Control Resonant.
Yes, we definitely need to talk about that.
We definitely need to talk about. We're huge fans of Remedy at Uncanny Collective. Honestly, I think that Control is absolutely brilliant, and I think Alan Wake 2 is probably one of my favourite games of all time. I just think it's a beyond fantastic, and you love that game too, don't you?
Yeah. I had the added level of when we were playing through Alan Wake 2. I did my first ever with Connor watch through of Twin Peaks, and it felt like we were watching Twin Peaks, and then we got to play in Twin Peaks. It was amazing. You can just see all the influence that that they have through anything David Lynch. It's great. And also, like, as someone who loves coffee and loves a kind of spooky, eerie vibe, it's like, I don't know, sometimes you're like, did they just like look into my brain and say, I know what she'll like, and then they turn it into a game. I just think it's brilliant. And Control, it feels like, obviously it's all part of the same universe, right? But it's kind of got a different feel in terms of the gameplay. Much more sort of supernatural kind of stuff going on, which is really cool. And that's what I'm really looking forward to with the new one coming out, which is meant to come out this year, I think. But there's no
this year.
Hard and fast release date yet?
I don't think so. But it looks like it does look like it's got more of an action focus. I mean, Control is a very action-based game, but it also has these moments of sort of quiet eeriness. The thing I always think, there's two things I think about with Control, really. One's just walking through those corridors of the oldest house and, just not knowing what you're going to see around the corners. But I can't remember the name of the department, but when they go into the sort of vast space that has all the rooms lined around it, and there's a guy whose job it is to just stare at this TV.
Yeah.
And he can't, he's not allowed to look away from it because he'll basically get teleported somewhere, and he says that someone didn't come to release him from his shift, and he's going, and it's really conceptually disturbing.
Yeah,
that.
I remember that bit because I think it's like almost like a massive library of are they objects of power at that point?
Yeah.
Is that what they're called?
I think it's objects of power. Yes, and yeah, that bit's super creepy. Resonant does look like, as we say, a bit more action based. Some outdoor levels which look like they're playing with the way that we look at things, that things can flip backwards and forwards. But we're there first day, aren't we? Really,
absolutely. Like the traversal looks absolutely wild. I was thinking whilst watching the gameplay that they showed in the state of play, I was like, oh, some of the combat kind of feels like Spider-Man. If you played any of those games, it kind of feels like that because it's all up close. It's all it's not so much projectiles from a distance with Jessie when she had like her weapon that she was using from afar. Dylan seems much more up in your face and very close to what he's attacking. But yeah, the traversal is wild in the way that it kind of fully flips and you're suddenly walking along the side of a wall. Also slightly terrifying, the idea that the hiss has potentially got outside of the oldest house and now it's in Manhattan, like in the actual town and city itself. Like that's kind of scary. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the story is going to develop. Based on that.
Definitely, I think the change of protagonist is a cool choice as well. Remedy always keeping us guessing, wondering what's coming. Will there be a musical number this time? I really hope so.
I hope so.
I really, really hope so. And I hope it does keep. There are moments of that sort of darker side of Remedy's universe because that feels so integral to it. But Control Resonant, absolutely up for that. Mention this one really, really quickly because we've already spoken about it on the podcast. It's coming out next week, literally a week from the day this podcast episode comes out. Resident Evil 9 Requiem got another trailer. It looks amazing. We're going to play it. It's the conclusion of the story they've been telling for 9 mainline entries and countless spin-offs. There for that, brilliant. No more needs to be said. And away from the state of play, one last object before we move on. Bloober Team, who created the Silent Hill 2 remake, have had a countdown going on their website, and it's just been revealed that the game they were announcing is Layers of Fear 3. This is 10 years after the first game. I know people have mixed opinions on the Layers of Fear games. I really like them. There's a bit in the first one that involves I might have actually shown it when you and Connor were round ours once, actually, where they're sort of in a kid's nursery and the camera keeps spinning round and this sort of creepy imagery keeps
I remember
popping
that.
up. That lives rent free in my head. Super creepy. Nothing wrong with a walking simulator style game every now and again. Yeah. I'm here for it. So let's wishing Bloober Team lots of hope that one's good as well because they're on a roll. So, moving now from something completely unrelated to all of those things to the main focus of our episode today, which is, of course, 1998's Bride of Chucky, the 4th film in the Child's Play franchise. Or is it the Chucky franchise? Because, we've had probably more entries with Chucky in the title now than Child's Play. But whichever way we look at it, here we are with this film. And everything changes here, doesn't it, really? This is, we've had these 3 films, which are these great slasher movies, which we've gone over the virtues of, plenty of, lots and lots over the last few episodes. And now we arrive at really a change of genre, a change of style, a heavier focus on Chucky as a main character. I think sort of built up I feel like we've been building to this film, right? I feel like we've been building towards this film now for 3 other episodes. Before we go into it in full, when the credits rolled, what were your impressions? What did you think?
Oh, what an absolutely brilliant film. Like, I I kind of had the feeling I would like it, partly because I heard that Jennifer Tilly was in it and I love her. So I was like, oh, it's going to be great because she's fabulous. And also I think the anticipation and the lead up of knowing that, you know, we now have a really established character in Chucky, that I was like, I'm sure that it's going to go somewhere slightly different. And the title implies that it is as well. Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to watch it again. I was saying to you before we started recording that it was one of the ones I just rented because I was like, oh, it's fine. I'll rent it so I can watch it. And now I wish that I'd bought it because I really, really, really want to watch it again already.
Yeah, see, this is the benefits of physical media, Steve says. You know,
yes.
but yeah, it's such a good film. I guess it spawls into sort of a sort of list of these really. But if I was asked which one of these films I was most excited to rewatch again, it's this one. Even though it's probably the one I've seen the most times, it's the one that really solidified my my love of these films. It really does do something different with it. I remember distinctly seeing the trailer for it. I remember seeing it before The Matrix in the Warner Brothers in Dagenham. There was the poster in the foyer with Chucky Gets Lucky, and
that's great.
And then seeing the trailer, which actually did spoil the sex scene.
That's a shame.
But that's never mind. And from I really felt from then on, I'd seen I think the first one at least by this point. So, but yeah, then it was just all straight ahead. I'm here for all of these. So yeah, let's do a little bit of background on the, what happened after Child's Play 3, basically, because it's quite a long gap. So after the third one, there sort of was a sense that they needed to go somewhere else with the franchise. And looking at the gap of time, 7 years, that obviously meant that, number one, they were going to take their time finding exactly what to do with Chucky. But also the landscape was changing for the horror genre in the 90s at this point. We spoke about this, I think, quite a bit in the last episode. But at the end of the 90s, those slasher icons, franchises that seemed like, certain box office money weren't having the same returns they had. They were resorting to trying different things with them, that sort of was, I guess, the right idea, but maybe what they tried didn't work. Fans were getting exasperated, franchises were changing hands, and eventually all of those big names sort of died off for a while. The Freddys and the Jasons and the Chuckies and the Michael Myers. For a few years we had a sort of gap there, and then of course the big cataclysmic change happened, which was Scream. And Scream came out, and suddenly the way people looked at slasher films changed enormously. Suddenly there had to be sort of commentary and certain knowingness about the films. And I think you do see, I don't think that, I think that there are elements that Bride of Chucky does that is very much its own thing, but some of those elements, a sort of sense of self-referentialness, a sense of humour, come through much more strongly in this film. And in terms of the sort of genre shift there, was it as pronounced as you thought it was going to be? Was it less so, more so compared to the previous films?
I think it was, I think in particular compared to number 3, it's quite a shift. But I feel like we felt a sort of a desire to move into this direction after number 2. So I actually think it didn't feel like too much of a change. It didn't feel too dramatic to me. But I think also, like, in a way I was kind of expecting it. So yeah, it probably was less unexpected than maybe it would have been to someone who'd maybe watched the first 3 and then went in to see this 7 years later and went, oh, that's quite a bit different. But yeah, it certainly didn't seem jarring in any way. In fact, it felt like exactly the right thing to be doing. It felt like the perfect kind of, like if you'd said to me, how did you feel after watching the third one? What's your favorite one? I'd say number 2. But now I would say it's this one, because it feels like the right. It's the right progression. It's the right way to do a sequel at this point. So yeah. Absolutely. I thought that they nailed it in terms of the tone.
I agree. And I guess there was sort of, in those first 3 films, there is a sort of living within an established sort of legacy of slasher films, of sort of 80s thriller style films. And then by this point, it seems that they just go, but what makes Chucky different to all of these? You know, apart from the fact that obviously he's a doll and he's small and he's got this incredible personality. Let's take that character and run with it. And what's the world that Chucky inhabits if you can just create the world that Chucky inhabits? And that's what we get. What we get here. So we new director again with this one, Ronnie Yu, who will also be known to horror fans as the director. He would later work on Freddy vs. Jason, which, you know, to be honest, which we could talk about, but I think is probably a film that we're going to talk about at some point, I would imagine. He was hired after his film, the Bride with White Hair, which was really, really popular. He'd had quite a few films before that, but I think that was the one that really got him attention back at home and overseas. And then he was hired after a couple more films to do Bride of Chucky. And he does bring this really polished feel to it, I think. You know, there's a sort of huge sense of humour in Bride of Chucky, but it's a pretty sort of good looking film, I think. You know, would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you think about the time that it was made, I think there were only maybe 2 moments where I was like, that looks a little bit dated. And one of them was meeting Charlotte the Spider when she dropped onto the gothic boyfriend's face. And what was the other one? I think it was maybe a moment before, like, the car explosion, like the van explosion. Okay. But, like, outside of that, everything else was great. I really enjoyed it. I even the kind of practical effects of, like, the makeup and the kills and that sort of thing, I thought they were really, really good. So yeah.
I think it does have a couple of moments of, you know, what the obligatory late 90s, early CGI that's happening then. You know, I think about the water, we're skipping ahead a bit here, but the waterbed death, which which is an awesome death and looks great after the effect, you know, but when they're all raining down, it looks like, you know, it looks like CGI effects, doesn't it? But all the practical stuff. But after the 3rd film, which is entirely animatronic Chucky, there is one scene in this film which we'll mention later on where we do have actors portraying Chucky and Tiffany, and you know, this for me, this is the coolest look for Chucky in this film. Really, I mean, it might not be his scariest. I still think maybe the first film at the end when he's all burnt and it is really nightmarish, but he just looks cool in this one with all the he really does. So let's start at the beginning then, because we're jumping around. So let's go back to the start of the film. And what we have at the beginning is another really cool setup. These films just do really good setups, don't they? You know, they're fab. Where we have a police officer in Lockport. I think it's Lockport Prison, isn't it? And he is sneaking into the evidence room to, unbeknownst to him and the audience at that moment, but to get the remains of Chucky and take them to someone. And in this evidence room, there are all of these, you know, really iconic slasher movie character objects. There's Michael Myers' mask, there's Freddy Krueger's glove, Leatherface's chainsaw, and Jason Voorhees' hockey mask. And you think, Christ, this must have been a rough area to live in for a period of time, right? You know, you think,
all the famous slasher chaps were all there, all hanging out.
And it just seems it's such a nice sort of little homage, you know. And there's another really big homage later on to, which we'll mention when we get to it, of another horror icon that we've spoken about a bit on the podcast so far.
Easy on that gin now.
I know, I'm at least a quarter through the can. So police officer Bob is selling, he's taking Chucky's remains to someone that we don't know, but when he arrives where he's going, he talks on the phone to a woman on the phone on the way there and nearly crashes, and she seems to really enjoy the fact that he nearly crashes. And then when he gets there, he is curious, wants to look in the bag, but has his throat cut from behind him. And we then meet one of what is now the next to Chucky, if not just as much as Chucky, the most iconic character in the Chucky franchise, Tiffany Valentine, played by the extraordinary, the wonderful, the astonishingly voiced Jennifer Tilly.
Yeah. Oh my God. And how absolutely phenomenal does she look? Like,
I mean,
it is unreal. And then obviously we get a little bit more of her in her full human body before she turns into doll form. But
for a period of time,
what an absolute stunner. But also like the perfect choice for this
There's
character.
There's no one else.
I can't imagine anyone else. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, it's taken. I just think that she's absolutely incredible, and as you say, because her voice is so iconic, it's so perfect for her to be doing the voice acting when in doll form. So it's match made in heaven, perfect casting, 10 out of 10, no notes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think made even better when she does get into doll form later on in the film by the fact I think they recorded with each other, her and Brad. In the same booth, or at least in the same building at the same time, and the chemistry there is so brilliant, and she has become this incredibly iconic character in her own right. I think for fans of the films, easily as much as Chucky. She's just fantastic. So Tiffany kills this guy. And then you get this great close-up of her, and well, hello, Dolly, and then we get the great Rob Zombie track, Living Dead Girl, off of the album that I think came out the year before or the same year, Hellbilly Deluxe, which is an absolute cracker with some really, really good songs on it. And it's probably a good point, actually, to speak about the late 90s, early 2000s, tradition of filling your movies with sort of nu metal stroke sort of melodic heavy metal bands of the day. Bride of Chucky definitely does this. I remember owning the Freddy vs. Jason soundtrack a couple of years later, which has a similar thing going on. But it does, much like films in the 80s and using the music in there, it does set these things so perfectly in a sort of time capsule, doesn't it? That's that style of music.
And for me, what I really love about it is that because I didn't watch this film when it came out, it like has this added layer of nostalgia because you're suddenly listening to all this music that you were like, oh my God, I remember when I first heard that, or I remember like playing that in the garage at like a house party or something. Like it all kind of like brings back that whole era, like that. Yeah, the idea that you said of like a time capsule, it suddenly kind of takes you straight back into that time zone, and then you just like transported. I think it's great. I also think that like it does make me then go, okay, like do we? I can't think if I've seen anything recently that has that same kind of idea where you could like where you could buy the soundtrack and the soundtrack has that same kind of feeling as something from like the late 90s, early 2000s, because I think they absolutely encapsulate that so well in those films. But I feel like maybe it's because we don't have the nostalgia value anymore. Like if we're watching something now,
sorry, that's made me really contemplative. I think so I know that a film that has actually just come out and is probably creating an awful lot of sort of mixed opinions and whatnot at the moment is the soundtrack to Wuthering Heights, which has Charlie XCX doing the music. And I did actually listen. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, and I did listen a couple of nights ago to the songs from it, and they're kind of wonderful. Actually, I haven't seen the film yet. But they really do have, they're sort of thematically linked. I don't know how direct the lyrics are. I haven't listened to it enough times. But it's this really moody sort of art pop that she's done for it. And that's cool. I guess that's maybe sort of the first time in a while we've had something so intrinsically tied to each other. I mean, what was sort of lucky for me around this time period was that I was listening to all of the bands that were on those soundtracks. I remember Queen of the Damned. They actually wrote original songs for the film, and
oh, cool.
So you had like Disturbed and Marilyn Manson and stuff like that on there, and the songs were in the movie, but they were performed by the hot, heavy rock acts of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's you could be really cynical and go, well, it's just there to market songs, and of course, realistically, it is. This is what they're there for. But we've always had stuff like that. If we can get some decent music in our films, the only thing it does do is it does insert the film into a particular period, no matter how it looks. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. Yeah. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. That's all good.
Yeah, I agree.
So we Chucky is rescued, for want of a better word, by Tiffany here, and is taken back to her trailer where she lives. And this is where we immediately get some really good nods of humor here. We get her reading the Voodoo for Dummies book, and in there is the Dumbala ritual from all the films that have been so far. And all happens very quickly, by the way. It's barely 10 minutes into the film, and Chucky's been taken from the station. This cop is killed. We meet Tiffany and get a sense of who she is almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Chucky the ritual is done, and she awake, and nothing happens. What a crock, which is great, and we get a nice reference back to that later on. And then Tiffany is sort of interrupted by this gothic boyfriend that she has, Damien, who is very much in the sort of Marilyn Manson get-up at this point. And he arrives, played here by Alexis Arquette, who has a huge run of credits and sadly passed away. I think it's almost exactly 10 years ago this year, which is very, very sad. But Alexis gives a great performance in this, really, really good with the short amount of screen time they have. And I have really fond memories of Alexis Arquette in the Wedding Singer, where they play the boy George. What do you call it? Tribute act in that. And yeah, very, very, very sad, but a great body of work, and a lot of activism, particularly for sort of trans people, and for highlighting sort of important issues. So they're here as Damien, and desperately trying to get Tiffany to finally, come on, how long we've been seeing each other for now, and and she has a really great line, haven't you made me wait long enough? No, which is really good.
So quick, it's brilliant.
And Tiffany at this point sort of cottons on to the fact that the sort of pentagram that's been drawn on the ground has been, Chucky's not there anymore. And she tries to get Damien to look under the sofa, nothing there, and they end up on the bed, and she thinks, oh no, Chucky's alive, I know what I'm going to do. And so she handcuffs him to the bed and dances for both of them. She finds the Chucky doll and places Chucky on Damien's chest. And this is a hot moment. This is a hot moment. I mean, let's not pretend it's anything but what it is. She's amazing. Again, she looks amazing.
Doesn't she look absolutely like unreal? This is maybe that's part of the reason why they put her in as a doll from not too long after this. They're like, we could probably leave her in full body mode, but I think people might lust after her too long. Turn her into a doll.
Maybe she's just too good, so we're gonna have to put her in a doll.
Exactly. We have to contain some of this. Yeah, contain some of this sexuality. Let's just kind of let's bottle it into the voice and then put it into the doll. But that whole sequence, I was just like, yep. And this is why I should have bought it. Because then I could watch it whenever I want.
There you are. And at this point, Damien makes sort of comment about Chucky not being able to satisfy her. I can't remember the exact line, but Chucky does a full, clearly he's so incensed he can't pretend that he's not been brought back to life already, and he does a full-on Reagan head twist. And it's a really sort of gnarly thing he does here, because he grabs Damien's lip ring and like pulls it out and splits his lip open, and there's blood everywhere. And he then puts a pillow on Damien's head and sits on it, and him and Tiffany have a conversation now, sort of catching up as Damien suffocates to death underneath them. And it's a really good sum up of, what's so good about these, that they can be macabre and funny and dark and nasty and sort of weirdly lighthearted all at the same time, It's a good start to the movie. It's a good start
also
to the movie.
That, like, the pulling out of the piercing thing is just something that kind of like creeps me out anyway. I've only got my ears pierced, but I think part of the reason why I am so terrified about the idea of having anything else pierced is the idea of it being ripped out. Like so that is kind of like a sort of in the back of my head, like a fear that I had. And then I was watching it going, oh my God, no. Right after there was a spider, which is again another fear that I have. Yes. So I was like, this is like a double whammy for me straight away. But thankfully, like, it was kind of like, it was like a little horror sandwich where the filling was Jennifer Tilly dancing around. So I was like, all right, see what I can cope, because we have a little sexy dance in the middle. But those are two things that I am not into. So that was quite intense. But I do really love that. I think quite soon after that, or I don't know if it might be a scene later, but Tiffany sort of says, that she was always faithful to Chucky, and she says, "Oh, I'll kill anybody, but I'll only sleep with someone I love." And I'm like,
yes,
I mean, there's so many great lines in this film.
There are.
Oh my goodness,
there are so many great lines in this film. I think about the piercing thing. I think school fucks you up, because at school you're basically told, I haven't got any piercings, but you always saw that people that did have piercings would be told, well, put a plaster over it in PE and this, that, and the other, because it's going to get wrenched off and half your face is going to come away. I might be embellishing slightly, but it's something along those lines, isn't it? And then you're sort of terrified for the rest of your life, really. So Damien dies, and Chucky and Tiffany are reunited, but this is it doesn't last very long, this sort of state of contentment, because immediately Tiffany explains to Chucky that before he died 10 years ago, she's been trying to track him down, and she still kept the ring that he's left for her, and he doesn't even try and pretend that this is the case. He's like, oh, I took that off someone, it's worth about $5 or $6,000, and he just laughs at her. And she's obviously very understandably upset by this, and locks him into like a baby crib.
Yeah.
Which was, she says, I've got the crib ready, as if they were going to have a kid. It's already got a lock on it. So you sort of think...
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess if that was the way that she was planning on raising the kid, in sort of like a miniature jail, maybe it's a safety measure for when, like, you're driving around, because then that way the kid won't sort of climb out of the little nursery prison thing. I don't know. This is me trying to justify it, when actually I just think that, maybe she had planned on locking someone in there all along, whether it was Chucky or whether it was anyone else.
Yeah. But it turns out that it's Chucky who gets it here. He gets locked in the crib, and he's left with all the, toys and whatnot that they're, the baby that she'd dreamed of them having together would have. And I think there's been actually, I think there's been a cut in the middle of this scene, actually, and we've met some other characters. So we'll go back and meet them, I think.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, the other people in the film, the
others,
ones that aren't Chucky and Tiffany. And they're quite a nice cast here, actually, I have to say. We have... well, first off, we actually meet David and Jade. So David, played by Gordon Michael Wolver, and Catherine Hagel playing... Jade here, and they're meeting. David is arriving to her house, meets her uncle, who's the chief of. Does he say he's the chief of police? He's the chief of police.
I think so. Yeah.
Chief Kincaid, played by John Ritter, which is lovely as well. Nice to see John Ritter there. And David, as he's there to pick her up for a party or a dance, and. He keeps giving these sort of like little hints that maybe Jade isn't maybe the sort of person that he's particularly, that he got, not, just maybe not, because of the sort of ideas of what the chief thinks that a guy that's picking her up should want. But he does say that he's a marked improvement over her previous partner. And there's a hint that her mum sort of says that mum and dad aren't around anymore, and she says, "Oh, they would have liked all of my friends. They liked all of my friends." And they drive away, the two of them, and then we do find out that actually all along, her and her partner, Jesse, are still together. He's been sitting in the back seat, and they're reunited. So they are our young hot couple that are the protagonists of this film, and David is their friend. And this is
that was my light.
Ooh.
I'm still here. I just lost.
I was really worried a good guy Noel had run in and tried to club you to death with your light there, but not to worry. I mean, maybe it would be on theme, wouldn't it? If nothing else.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
We've said nothing but good things about you so far, Chucky.
I know, why would they want to kill us? Like literally, we're the last people they should want to kill. And so you've got a couple, and this is, I guess, a good point to talk about the fact that someone is missing from this film, and they are not a character, and that's here, and that's Andy from the first three films. Yeah. He doesn't appear in this film, and I guess it was part of the sort of moving on of the story. They felt that in order to progress Chucky, they had to, maybe leave Andy behind, because otherwise it would have just been Chucky trying to take over Andy again, I guess, really, and they wanted to do new things with it. Sorry, go ahead. No problem.
No, I was just going to say, I also feel like there are several moments in the script itself where it's obviously being self-referential, and it's talking about, the knife is so old school, that's so 80s, and lots of kind of commentary on, we've already done that. We need something fresh. We need to be doing more. We need to move into the 90s. And I just think there was a lot of kind of commentary on that. I guess not just about themselves, but that is probably why they did want to move away from Andy, because that was we've done that now. We're going to move into a new sphere. I think it's just a full acceptance of that's where we are now.
Absolutely, and Andy's we spoke a lot about Andy. Andy's a great character, and he's the perfect sort of yin to the yang of Chucky. In those first three films, but we're doing something different here, and I think to the film's credit, and to absolutely no disregard to the character, it doesn't feel missed, that storyline. I think in this film, I think it's clear clear that we're moving on to something else.
I also think you still have, with the couple, with Jade and Jesse, you still have this kind of, the concept of innocence is still there. It's just represented in a different way.
Yeah, because they aren't sort of unbearably sweet. You do wonder why the uncle got such a problem with Jesse, because he just seems like a really nice, nice young guy. There we are. Because they're our main characters, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. I'd like to talk about David just for a moment here, because I think David does a couple of things that I think for the time that this film came out are really important and really interesting. The first thing to say is that I think from this point onwards, I think Chucky becomes more and more involved in sort of telling sort of queer storylines, and moving into avenues where the sort of camp is used a little bit more, but also seriously discussing and talking about sort of queer issues, queer characters, and things like that. And I think David is just, and I'm not saying those things weren't kind of somewhere there, that Don Mancini being a gay man himself, that there'd always been an element of these things coming into the story. But here is where I think we get that with the character of Tiffany, with the character of David, with the sort of general sort of naughty subversion of the film. These are films that really speak to a queer audience, that are really loved by queer audiences, and as the series goes on now, that becomes more and more prevalent, and David is a character that is first and foremost his sexuality is in no way something that is ridiculed in the film or made fun of or is made a joke. The fact that he is gay and has relationships with men is just accepted, and the two lead characters are conventional but do not in any way not respect him as a person, and at times he's sort of a positive force, at all times a positive force in their lives together. And I think that that's something that shouldn't be taken for granted and should be thought about, because this is in the at this time period that maybe wasn't the way that gay, lesbian, trans, queer characters were represented in mainstream films and in mainstream horror films. And he's just a lovely guy, a good guy, and I think that's a really cool thing that needs to be spoken about in this film.
Yeah, definitely. And like alongside that, I mean, I agree with everything that you've said, but I also I really liked the fact that he was gay was kind of inconsequential.
Absolutely.
It wasn't a topic for continual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that, like, when it was brought up, it was like, oh my goodness, what? Tell me more. Like, that was just something that everybody knew, with obviously the exception of the uncle, but like, that's not really any of his business.
Yeah.
But in terms of the friendship circle, in terms of the trio, that was just like, yeah, that's who he is, and there's no problem there. We don't need to sort of drill into that. We don't need to like put it in the forefront. It's just it's who he is. And I really loved that they didn't sort of, I also love that they didn't sort of make him sort of mince about or have a little rainbow flag all the time. He's a real character. Exactly.
He's a real character, and he's not a punchline at all. And at times the two leads rely on him. And it's just a lovely representation. It's something you'll see more and more of as this series goes on. And
Great.
It's why these films and why Chucky has in a strange way become an icon of the community. And
I love that.
That's pretty cool. We meet our characters. They are driving to this party. They get pulled over. But what's the officer's name that sort of is doing the uncle?
God, I've completely forgot. I know who you mean though. Needle nose. Is it needle nose?
Needle nose. That's it. Yeah.
I don't know if that's his real name. That's what they call him.
Only to his friends, and he pulls over and he sort of interrupts them. The uncle turns up, and you get a sense that this is a sort of this is a sort of doomed situation, because he's always going to get in the way. They need to get away from this situation. It's all a bit desperate. And David says to Jesse, "If I were you, I'd get the two of you out of here. I'd just get away."
Also, are they? It looks like they're going to the prom.
Yeah, so you're right. It is the prom. Yeah,
and they're all like made up, and he gets them to stand outside in the rain. So this Needle Nose is a total prick. Yeah. And so is the uncle, because he's obviously put Needle Nose up to this. Like, the whole thing is just like, this uncle's on a power trip, and it doesn't seem justified in any way why he has any like issue with Jade, with Jesse, or with Jade like going out at all. Like, I don't really understand where it even comes from, because we don't really learn anything about the relationship prior to this moment. But
because in the scenes that are sort of coming up from now, when Jesse is shirtless washing his car, I just bring that up in passing, obviously. Just because
it's a tough movie to watch.
It's arduous. I've got it on in the background now. When you now see him he lives at the same sort of where the in the same trailer park as Tiffany, and you see him, and he goes over and has this conversation with her, and you get a sense of both of their characters, and there's nothing about him which would. It's not like he seems like some sort of hellraiser. I guess he maybe looks a bit like one, but he doesn't seem like a bad dude at all. He seems like a nice guy. And
I wonder if the fact that he lives at that trailer park is a judgmental thing that the uncle's doing.
A sort of class-based thing, yeah.
Especially if he's chief of police, so he thinks he's Billy Big Balls. So maybe he thinks that Jade should have better than that. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why when he sort of grills David when he comes to pick her up. He's saying, "Oh, you know, you're going to college. What are you doing?" and all this sort of thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. It seems like it should be coming from a place of him wanting her best interests, but it doesn't.
No, it never does. We're in this sort of 2 weeks in a row of having bastard uncles, aren't we? Really, after the 13th part, it's just a trope. You know, why can't you be my uncle and not a massive arsehole? I don't know. They wrote
That's
me
all we
that
ask.
way. They wrote me that way. And here we have Tiffany. She gets Jesse to help her into the car. She's put Damien's body in a suitcase.
It's like a trunk, like a travel trunk thing.
Thank you very much. You got all the right words tonight. Prom trunk.
I'm doing my best. Needle nose.
Just hold it, barely keeping me afloat as I drag my way through this. And so he picks it up and he puts the trunk in the back of the car for her. And at this point, I think there's a really good line here where you hear Chucky yell at her from the trailer, and he's like, it's something like, "Get the fuck in here, where's this, that, and the other," and doesn't Jessie say something like, what are you doing? She says, like, babysitting, foul mouth little fucker, you know. And, really good, really, really good. And this is where you get another sense of like who Tiffany's character is, because you get this sense that, you know, she quite likes Jesse, and she sort of says, maybe we could go out for something to eat, and he says, "I'm sorry, I've got a girlfriend," which again, not a dick move. And she's quite sweet here, you know. She is at heart. If you had to describe Tiffany, I think before the obvious murderer, you know, she's a romantic, isn't she? She has huge romantic ideals about love and companionship and you know, finding the one, really. And it makes her a really tragic character, despite the fact that she does a lot of murdering, you know.
Yeah, but I think, I also think that's why they've given her the surname Valentine, right? So that's to kind of tie in with her sort of obsession with love. But, like, the obsession is still very much, it still seems very sweet and very innocent. But I do think that the fact that we, you know, sort of forgive all the murders is probably the same reason why we still love Chucky, even though he does all the murders, is, like, she's so charismatic and dynamic as a person. That we feel for her. In fact, I felt for her most of the way through the thing, and I was like, we all know that Chucky's a bit of a bastard, but he's quite mean to her. He's like awful. Throughout the whole thing. Yeah, and she deserves better than that. And I think, I don't know whether she realizes that until maybe near the end. But I think she, instead of realizing that she deserves better, she almost like lumps them together, thinking they're both as bad as each other. But I think that's unfair. I wouldn't put her in the same box as I would put Chucky in terms of personality type.
No, I guess not. I think you're absolutely right about there just being a huge sense of sympathy for her throughout the whole film, and particularly moments, you know, all the way through, but at the end when there's we're jumping slightly, but when there's that sort of crossing, which we'll speak over later on, and you know the way what's been, you know, happened to her as a result of this. And I'm going to say this line now, and it is a massive spoiler for the end of the movie, but we're going to get there anyway, and I'll forget to say it otherwise. But when he does stab her at the end, and his line to her is "Get off my knife," you know, as if she's sort of imposing herself on his weapons, you know. You know, you can read into that a lot of other things as well, you know, but it's a deeply grotesque thing. And I should probably say at this point, you know, people that love Chucky, as you've just said, people that love him and, you know, what he's sort of become as an icon of horror, and the representation that these films have for particular groups and whatnot, that isn't to diminish the fact that he's an evil character, right? He's an evil character. He's an irredeemable character in almost every way. But is also, you know, we love a villain, don't we?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah. So they head off, and she gives a bit of advice to Jesse about if you're going to cook for him, if she's going to cook for you, you should at least do the dishes, which becomes really important later on. Absolutely. So after this point, where are we plot wise? We're doing good work. We're getting through at a good pace here. So what this comes down to now is that Tiffany, she comes back to the trailer. Chucky is now still locked up and has written in blocks, isn't it? Like, kill Tiffany slowly, and on the little machine, spell woman, bitch. Nice work, mate. Setting us all back. And she arrives back and she says, "I've given this whole thing this whole marriage thing a lot of thought, and this, and Chucky's like, oh, you'll never regret it. I'll be so good to you, this, that, and the other." And she presents him with a doll. She's bought a doll and says that this is who you deserve, this doll. She puts it in there with him, and it falls forward and smacks him on the face. And she walks away laughing, and he's been told, and you just get the anger here. He's so angry, incensed. And then we get a scene where we get the transformation scene here, where Tiffany the person becomes Tiffany the doll. And this is such a great moment for several reasons. First and foremost, Tiffany's death itself is so good with the electrocution. But also we get the homage here to the name of the film, which, Bride of Chucky, which is, of course, homage to Bride of Frankenstein, the James Whale film from the 30s, the sequel to his probably the most important, or at least in one of the most important horror films ever made, Frankenstein, the first Universal horror film. And which is also, the Bride of Frankenstein particularly is also another film which has an enormous amount of queer subtext, hinted at in this queer characters, and is, a really fitting film for this film to, homage. And they're watching it on the film. We see Dr. Pretorius, giving it this. He's so good in this, in Bride of Frankenstein. And Chucky, gets out by using the ring of the doll to break free. And he runs into the room to stab Tiffany. She kicks him very, very hard. And he, the TV that she's watching this film on, as the bride is, so the scene in Bride of Frankenstein, for people that haven't seen it, throughout the whole of this film, the Frankenstein monster is asking for a mate. It wants someone to live with because it looks the way it does, and it can't be accepted by someone that's living. So basically makes Frankenstein create him a bride. And when the bride is brought to life, she's actually only in a very small amount of the film, right at the very end. And when she is brought to life, she sees Karloff's Frankenstein monster and rejects him immediately, is horrified by him. And we see this in Bride of Chucky. This makes Tiffany cry. She cries at this moment in the film, and as she is electrocuted by the TV, the TV bobs out, and we see the face of the bride screaming, and then Chucky comes in with the doll and transfers her spirit into the what will become the Tiffany doll. How was this moment for you, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it was unexpected, because I wasn't sure how we were going to get to the point of having another. Like, I knew that we had the doll there, so I was still not really sure about how everything was going to turn out. And also, having looked at Tiffany and looked at the doll, I was like, this doesn't line up for me. Like, because Chucky seems like quite a good representation of Charles Lee Ray, with the exception of the hair color, but like the sort of expressions and everything are very similar. Whereas I felt like I wasn't really. I was still trying to figure out how it was going to happen. So when he comes in trying to stab her and she kicks her, I was like, oh, it's not going to happen now. But then this whole electrocution sequence was brilliant, and like it kind of harks back to the electrocution connection we have in is it the second film when Chucky gets brought back?
Yes, absolutely.
Although I do feel like we have like another element that gets brought in this film to do with the voodoo side of things, where he needs the amulet. So there's a lot of kind of like I don't really know what the essence of him is, but I feel like it's whatever makes sense in the moment for the film, and I'm never really offended by that. I'm like, great, I'm here. I'm whatever you want to do.
That's definitely what's going on here. I mean, I think we had a bit of a fun discussion at the beginning of Child's Play 2 about where does Chucky the doll end and where does the spirit of Charles Lee Ray begin, and exactly what part of the doll is he? And as you say, it's not really important in the same way that I think the use of the Dumbledore ritual, the amulet in this one, which is, not even, they've put it in the photo of Charles Lee Ray, haven't they? They've not mentioned it up until this point.
Yeah.
And it's plot device. It's a good way of changing things up, making things, so they need to get somewhere, really. And it works for this. And it continues to be sort of how Chucky is navigating the world, trying to use this ritual to eventually get what he needs. So Tiffany wakes up in the doll, is obviously just horrified by what he's done, and you think, well, of course he's done this. Of course he's done this to you. And he explains that either he's done this because they can either stay stuck in these doll bodies, or they can travel to the cemetery where Charles Lee Ray's body is buried and get the amulet of Dumbledore so they can put themselves into new bodies. It didn't work the first 3 times, but damn it, it's lucky number 4.
This is the one.
Lucky number 4. And so she says, well, why don't we just go there? And he says, because we're dolls, we can't just get there. What does he say? You can do the steering wheel and I'll work the pedals, or something like that, which is really great. And so she decides, oh, well, I'll ask Jesse, and Jesse obviously gets this message, he asks she offers $500 and he asks for $1,000, and he thinks, this is our chance. I can take, we can leave. And we can...
My light is possessed today.
It is, absolutely. Absolutely. It's when you start hearing the creaking now. If that keeps happening, we're going to have to move on and do The Exorcist, just so we can have a sort of a thematic link here. And so he decides, well, I'll take this money, we'll escape, we'll get away from Jane's uncle, and we can go and live our new life, which just goes to show you that back in 1998, $1,000 was enough to do more than a weekly shop.
That'll get you far.
So there we go. Back in my day, we could see a cinema film for a...
that's really sad. But I mean, in my head, I was like, oh, the 90s. That's what, 10 years ago. I hate that's like the way that I think about time. When I know for a fact that is not accurate.
No, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while. So they decide they're going to leave, and Chucky and Tiffany are basically going to use these two to get to the heart of Dumbledore and the amulet and get themselves into some human bodies. Sorry, what was that?
My light again.
Oh, was it doing it again? Oh, sorry.
It's fine. No, it's fine. I will hold it. It will be fine. Maybe it's because we're recording in the evening. I don't know.
This is it. It's those twilight hours where anything can happen, really. So they decide they're going to get away. They arrive at Jade's house. They run upstairs to pack, and the uncle's there. He knows they're up to something, and he tells Needle knows that they're going to be leaving soon. And it's at this point where we get our next murder, isn't it?
Yes. We do.
And so he decides they're going to hide drugs in the car, basically, and they're going to frame the two of them. So he gets into the car, and you get this. Chucky and Tiffany are like, oh, they're sabotaging our ride, we're gonna have to do something about this. And this is where we get the moment that you said about Chucky's knife, and Tiffany saying, oh, it's so 80s, like, this is so in the past, you've got to improvise, you've got to do something interesting. And a very elaborate scheme is very quickly concocted here, where we get a row of nails lined up, which are then catapulted into the chief's face when he falls presumably dead onto the ground with all of these nails in his head, with a horrible grimace on his face. And Chucky looks at him and says, "Oh, that really reminds me of something." And of course here we've had our Jason, Michael, Freddy, Leatherface reference, and here we get our Pinhead reference. So it's nice that he wasn't left out. So they hide the body, and they're away, aren't they? They're off to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And then they are on their way. They're then interrupted by Needlenose, and there's this altercation between them. One we get Jade punches Needlenose, and while they go, I hope it is Needlenose, because otherwise I've said it a lot of times and I'm factually inaccurate.
But it was me who said it. So if it's wrong, then it's on me ultimately.
Your fault. And Jesse just says, "Look, I'm gonna sort this out. You go and get us some food. I'm gonna sort this out." And Needlenose, he checks the car and he finds this weed that has been put in there. Chucky and
before they've had a little smoke of it though.
This is it. Yeah,
Chucky and Tiffany have like a little toke. So
do you want to know? So funny thing about this, I thought when did I watch it? 2 days ago. So I was sitting there, and recently I was given a gift, and I haven't got it near me, or I'd go get it. But I was given a T-shirt, and it was I unravelled it, and it's a T-shirt of Chucky. I thought, oh great, a Child's Play T-shirt. But he's smoking a spliff, and I was like, "Oh, I won't wear that." And when I was watching this the other day, because when I got it, I was like, "Why's Chucky smoking a spliff?" I don't remember Chucky smoking a spliff. Blah 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 blah. And when I watched this, I was like, "Oh yeah, Chucky gets high." Yeah, in my ignorance, I forgot that Chucky gets high here, and so police officer goes back to the car to call this in to report it, and Chucky thinks, "Oh, we're going to solve this," and they basically create a way to put some clothing into the petrol tank and light it so that the police car is going to blow up. And there's another great moment here. I just keep remembering these really great moments of comedy where I think there's a guy getting stoned, isn't there, in a car nearby?
Yes.
And Chucky crawls past, looks at the guy, gives him the finger, and then keeps on rolling. And the guy just goes, "Rude fucking doll," and and hilarity ensues. So good.
I've said it before. There are so many great lines in this. I mean, and that's one of them. I remember thinking at the time, I was like, they are really going in on this. Like the comedy side of it is really here, and like for the most part, like it all lands.
Yeah,
like I was laughing along and just having a great time. And even though it's a 1998 release, I was like, yeah. This is still really funny even now.
Yeah, it has a hugely high hit rate on its comedy. It's weird actually, and I know the other episodes we've spoken about this at the end, but in terms of like the critical reception, but this film was very sort of, not particularly thought particularly high, particularly twice. It wasn't thought that high of when it came out, and it got very mixed reviews and. You watch it now and you can't quite believe anyone could be so allergic to fun, really. I mean, But this was at a time period, I think, when you look at reviews for... I mean, this has happened at various periods throughout all horror film and the genre in its whole, really. But when you look around this time period and you look at some really great films that released at this time and you see the critical response, you just get a sense that it just wasn't very cool to like horror movies, and no matter what the quality, people had decided what they thought before they even got in there. Really, really annoying. Anyways, this film's very funny, and "rude fucking doll" is a great line, and did remind me a bit of the line in the lift in the first film with the fuck you, which is really good, really, really good too. Yeah. I love, by the way, that I wonder how often I swear in this and what it's doing to our hopes of ever getting these videos to go out on a wider scale. But never mind, I digress. So
we can censor them. We can always censor them.
We can censor them. We can beep me.
We can bleep you.
I've lived my whole life waiting for a beep. So the two of them, they obviously this happens and they're horrified. They can't believe it's happened, that this car's just exploded. All the people around start to sort of go, that's them, this is them, and they drive off, and this is where they go get married, isn't it? They sort of arrive at this little chapel, you'd call it, wouldn't you? Little chapel, and they go get married, and it's a really well done bit, because you get a sense of their growing distrust of each other, that each of them thinks the other might be responsible in some way for what's going on, and there's really cutting between that and the the relationship between Chucky and Tiffany going on outside. And it's a weirdly sort of solemn moment, isn't it, where they're saying these vows, and there's this enormous amount of this distance that's grown between the two of them in a really short period of time.
Yeah, it does a really good job of representing that, but I think also they still go through with it. And I think both of them say, I think when they both separately call David, that they still love the other. And I think they even say it again to each other when they're sort of confronting each other about it, that despite what the other person is doing in their mind, like they're sort of speculating the other person's doing all the murders, they are still like in love with that person, and they still want to be with them. So they feel like conflicted. So because in my mind I was like, if you really thought that, would you still go through with this wedding? And clearly the love is better than the sort of speculated murder.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think that despite the fact that this is it's a film that runs shortly under 90 minutes. Its main, purpose is to be really entertaining and have some cool kills and have some fun. And it's it does all of this stuff really, really well. And they may not be the most incredibly developed three-dimensional characters in the world, but they're not just cardboard cutouts, are they? There's a really lovely sense of this. When you love someone, you're willing to forgive and, or at least try to forgive someone, and see beyond what is here a very glaring fault. And there is a really good parallel there with despite the fact they couldn't really be more different as characters, but with Chucky and Tiffany, which is that as awful as as they can be as characters, and as awful as Chucky is to Tiffany, because as you said earlier, it's all she's done bad things, but there's a scale here, and he's such a bastard. This sense of she wants to love him, and she wants to believe that at the heart of who Chucky is, there's someone worth loving, which is hard to see, but there is a parallel there between how some real life relationships can be,
Yeah, definitely. It makes Tiffany's situation even more you're even more able to sympathize with her because of how awful her situation is. And you see her seeing Jade and Jesse and aspiring to that kind of connection. And I think it would be lovely if she had that. I think even at one point she says, I can't remember the exact wording, but something like you never can get the good ones, or the good ones are always taken, or something like that. Yeah, and I think she says that quite early on to Jesse. And I think she maybe even says it again. I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah, I think there's sort of similar statements.
Yeah.
There's a moment. Sorry, go ahead.
No. That's all I had to say.
Okay. There's a moment earlier on actually where Jesse's saying to Jade, I'd never hurt you. We need to run away. Do you trust me? And they have this really sort of impassioned speech with each other, and they embrace and they kiss. And, Tiffany says something along the lines of, oh, that's so sweet, or that's so romantic, or no. And Chucky says to her, I give him 3 months, less if she gains weight, Yeah. And it's funny, but it's, it's awful, isn't it? That the way he is judging the worth of Tiffany really is what she is as an object, as how good she looks, or how she can serve him in some way. He's really not seeing it beyond that. And it's just a moment that you sort of you laugh at the moment, and then you think, you're such a shit. Rude fucking doll,
Yeah, exactly.
And so they get married, and it's during this the sort of cutback during this moment is the fact that the chief, who we thought is dead and has actually been in the trunk in the back of their van, has sort of sprung back to life. And while they're saying their vows, Chucky has he's doing the classic, as it were, and he's stabbing him brutally to death. Again, it's really well done. The juxtaposition is great. The sort of concern of the two of them over each other, the brutality of what's happening outside. It's really, really good stuff. It's really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so after this, they do what any newlyweds do. They book themselves into that assumes the other may be at this point not a mass murderer. It's a serial killer, isn't it? Because as David as David does highlight later on, mass murders are all done at once, and then serial killers have a cool down period, and I definitely didn't know that before the film.
Yes, thank you, David, for the education.
For enlightening me and my not already fascination with terrible human beings. So they end up in the honeymoon suite, and they are very quickly interrupted by another couple who are on their wedding night as well, but they seem very, very interested in sort of staying with the two of them. This is a nice moment of humour, isn't it? This is pretty, this is a bit of a light relief after the sort of darker scene that's just preceded it.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And there's a sort of implication that they're like, we're both two sets of newlyweds. Like maybe we could, have our wedding night, all four of us together, and it's all kind of meant to be a little bit of fun. Exactly. And then they get robbed, don't they?
They do. Yeah, the lady from this new couple robs them, and then they leave the room, and they count the money, and they start to get a bit romantic, and it's this is when because Tiffany sees, doesn't she, because they've taken the dolls into the room with them, and Tiffany sees that they've robbed them, and she decides she's going to go and do a murder on them. And this is where we get another. I know I mentioned the CGI earlier, but besides that, it's a really good kill where they're sort of starting to have sex on a waterbed, and Tiffany comes in with a champagne bottle, and as the woman looks at the mirror on the ceiling, she sees Tiffany with this incredibly manic evil grin on her face. Yeah, exactly. And she throws the champagne bottle. It smashes the mirror on the ceiling, and the shards of glass just cascade down, and rip them to bits. Cut them to bits.
It's brilliant, and it feels like this wonderful moment for Tiffany to have witnessed this kind of injustice to what she sees in this moment throughout the film as this kind of idealized version of love, and seeing that kind of get messed about with. It almost feels like she's taking out a sort of sense of justice against this other couple, and she's like, look, you don't mess with our people. And I think on a surface level, it's probably like, hey, don't take the money off the people that we need to take us to the cemetery. But I also think that she's trying to look after them, and I think she's kind of still advocating for love at this point. That's still, I think, in the forefront for her.
How can you? I think there's a sense there that that Tiffany does. I guess the difference between Tiffany and Chucky is the sense of a moral code, isn't it? And Tiffany does have a moral code. It might be different to what a lot of people's is, but she has one. Whereas he's just in it for himself. Whereas for her, she's she feels probably a sense that she's got a sense of righteousness about the things that she does. So the water explodes, the blood goes, the shards of glass descend, and Chucky sees this and is just overcome with this is the moment where he's like, oh no, actually, I love you. You're amazing. I love you. And he says, I should have done this a long time ago. And they have their own little ceremony together. He says, Tiffany, will you be my bride? Shame he doesn't say, will you be my bride of Chucky? Because then everyone could have gone, is this? It's the title of the film. And they he as they're sort of hugging and she gets really emotional, he says he's starting to feel a bit like Pinocchio. And explains to her that he is anatomically correct, and we witness, we've got Team America World Police with its sex scene, but I'm sorry, Chucky and Tiffany did it first.
Yeah, exactly.
Chucky and Tiffany did it first, and
they're inspirational.
They are. They're aspirational couple, and this bit is actually like this is going to sound really ridiculous. It's like really got the right look, the way it's shot, like the sort of the firelight and the dress coming off, and you're sort of oh, okay, and then they're sort of having sex, and she says to him, have you got a rubber? And he says, Tiff, I'm made of rubber, another great line. But this is a funny moment. And did you see it coming?
Did I see it? No, not at all. I didn't even know. I mean, considering it's called Bride of Chucky, I didn't think that the consummation or even like a celebration of them as a couple was going to happen. So, no, I didn't know that was going to happen. I thought it was hilarious and it was brilliant. And then also the sort of follow-on line to him saying, "Oh, I'm made of rubber," and she's like, "I thought you were plastic." And
like,
yeah. So silly, like that whole exchange, and I'm like, yeah, they seem like they had a great time.
Yeah. I'm starting to wonder whether I thought he was plastic. I don't think I did. I assumed that he wasn't plastic. So there we are. It's an easy mistake to make, Tiffany. We forgive you. We love you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the next day, they've consummated their relationship, and the housekeeper comes in to tidy the rooms, and it's played by the really, really wonderful actor Kathy Najima, who nice little cameo there. She comes in cleaning up, and she finds the body, screams. They walk in, Jesse and Jaden, they scream and they see these bodies, and obviously at this point they've been being shown an awful lot on TV, that they're suspects here, and they've already had their conversations with David, haven't they? In the middle of the night now. I've skipped the really important narrative point. So during
I think before the murder of the couple, Jesse sneaks outside to like go to a payphone, and Jade like quickly calls David, and then in the middle of that call, David has to swap over to Jesse to have the exact same conversation.
Absolutely, it's a really nice bit of fun here, and also it does just show that David is the guy they rely on, the person who they trust more than anything. And this is again nice little moment here. They come, so we go back to the aftermath. The motel maid is screaming. They're both screaming. They basically get out of there as quick as possible, and they then eventually they meet up with David, don't they? They he has sort of decided the only way to fix this is to get them both together and say, look, you're both worrying about the same thing. Either, it could be these several different things, but realistically, the most likely thing is that this is just a terrible misunderstanding for the two of you. And they're obviously terribly relieved. All during this conversation, he keeps saying something smells in the back of the van, and has a really weird line here where he doesn't say like poo, like poo, something smell. Like, he says, right, ooh, I think there's something a bit, like
poo. It smells weird.
Which is where we our vocabularies are quite different, I think. Personally, I may have used a choicer set of words, but that's me. He's a better person than I am. So he then locates the smell as being in the trunk that's in the back of the van that they're in. They're both sort of, reconciling. He lifts it up, finds the chief dead inside, and takes the gun and says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you've both, this is what you've both been doing. You must both be doing this." And, he gets out of the van, trying to get help. And this is where Chucky and Tiffany are like, right, okay, we've got to reveal ourselves to them. So they get guns out. They say, they reveal who they are. And this is, I think, the only moment here where I think, that where David is shortchanged a little bit as a character, is that he sort of is trying to get there. I think there's police across the road, isn't there? And he's trying to get their attention. He sees those. Once he's seen the dolls, he tries to make a run for it and is sort of just splattered by a van. And, it's a sort of fun sort of post, or maybe around the same time as Final Destination death, where it felt all sort of all horror films needed a sudden van running someone over. That's really, really shocking and makes you jump. But it did feel like he maybe deserved a more a better death. It's all a bit sudden, and while I'm not advocating for him to have a more sort of drawn out, painful death, it could have had a bit more consequence, I think, because once it happens, he's sort of very quickly sort of forgotten about, so that the film can carry on its... Do you think that's a fair statement?
I think that's absolutely fair, and I think that's in part because we both really liked the choice of, having David there and having him so important, especially to Jade and Jesse as their friend. It's a shame that he didn't get sort of... Well, he certainly didn't get a broken mirror, pieces of that falling on him. No. It was, quite abrupt, and, didn't seem satisfying, considering so the level of his character at that point, and also the ornate nature of the kills up until this point as well. But maybe is it meant to be a nod to Final Destination? Is the whole film essentially kind of making sure that it's kind of tipping its hat to all these various big franchises of the time?
I can't remember which came out first, to be honest with you, but I do feel there was a sort of run of horror films where they did... Oh, we've got a... Is that like a goblet? A tank? Do you call that a tankard?
It is a tankard. It's full of water.
It's
definitely not beer. I'm definitely not drinking wine and beer.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I love how in this, I've got these sort of this sort of knowledge of sort of bits and pieces of horror, but when it comes to real life stuff, I'm like, is that a tankard? Is that a truck? Were they going to the prom? As if I haven't actually interacted with human beings at any particular point in my life.
It was when you couldn't figure out the name for the word trunk, I was like, are we gonna be okay?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just funny, isn't it? I'm just sort of I reach for things that I feel I should know. I'll put it out, I'm 40 now, I'm just, it's just all gonna...
It's all going to go now.
It's all going to go now. What can I do? Never mind. But at least I've got my horror movies.
Exactly.
At least I can tell you the subtitle of every Halloween movie in order.
Good. I'm glad.
That's a talent that not everyone has. Because
Definitely
they don't want to. So now we have, and I guess to just finally sort of finish that point about David, I think for me the point it comes down to that in a film where there are a couple of moments where you do have a sort of genuine emotional pull, with the way Tiffany feels, with the way they feel when they're getting married. It would have nice to have had a little more acknowledgement of what that character meant to the two of them. Yeah, but
definitely.
the way he dies, it just sort of moves on quite quickly. So they drive off, and then there's the sort of exposition of them explaining what's going on to the two of them, that they're going to take them to get this heart of Dambler, that they're going to, they need to take them there. And eventually they say, we need to get new wheels because, you've been on the news loads, you keep having murders blamed on you, we need a different car that isn't the same one you left in. And they end up in a camper van, don't they? Where... we see that Jade has been tied up. Jesse is driving. Chucky's up the front with Jesse, and Tiffany is baking. Baking for Chucky. She's made him meatballs and she's making him cookies, and she brings them over to him, and he takes one, and they look happy until it's sort of expressed that Chucky then says to Jesse, if I'd known that this was what being married was like, I'd have got married a long time ago. If I'd known I wouldn't have to do anything for myself, I would have sorted this out. And then we do get a nice bit of sort of Jesse and Jay, they work the two of them really well here, where they sort of set Chucky and Tiffany against each other. And we get that, the dishes, if you cooked, he should do the dishes. And Tiffany's just angry immediately. He gets a plate thrown at him. And it's cool to see this little moment where they're not the ones getting the higher ground, that Jesse and Jade are working together to manipulate the two of them to try and escape.
Yeah, we suddenly see a nice little bit of teamwork there. The sort of thing that you imagine if Chucky and Tiffany were able to lock into, they would be absolutely unstoppable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If they were capable of not being quite so, figurehead, and not being quite so volatile as characters. And so, it's also sort of expressed to them during this journey that the two of them are going to be the ones that, whose bodies are taken over, which is obviously very clear to Chucky and Tiffany earlier on, but they're told this. But while this squabble's going on, Jade sees her moment and she kicks Tiffany into the oven on the van, and then just all hell breaks loose. Chucky, gives this angered sort of no, there's shots fired. The camper van goes to the road, but they're essentially at the cemetery now, so the sort of crash happens on the cemetery ground. And this is our one of our sort of more action moments. There's a couple of more sort of there's an explosion earlier on, obviously, with the car, and we get this here. But there's been a couple of these throughout the series where we get a nice sort of car explosion-y, action-y moment, and it always sort of does what it needs to do. Yeah, and so they Chucky, they eventually get to the grave. During this squabble, the sort of couples are separated. Tiffany is obviously horrendously burned from being put into the oven, but we get to the grave eventually, and it's dug up, and Chucky, once it's opened, Chucky is confronted with his 10-year dead human body, which is covered in rats. And he does he say something like, I wish I hadn't seen that.
Something like that.
And it is because you do get a sense that if this had happened to you, if you too had been transferred into the body of several good guy dolls over a 10-year period, and then saw your real body, it would be quite,
absolutely
bracing, wouldn't it? Really,
it would be for sure.
Yeah, I know I would be bothered.
I'd be shocked for sure.
Absolutely,
it wouldn't be what I wanted to see.
No, not on my top 10 list. So once they get this, Chucky begins the ritual to put the two of them into their bodies. But Tiffany has basically decided at this point that she doesn't want to do this. She probably doesn't want to stay in the doll. But this isn't the right thing to do. This is wrong. For as far as she's concerned, this goes too far. She tries to stop Chucky, and Chucky is completely not going to go along with this. She essentially says the lines that the Frankenstein monster has with the Bride of Frankenstein in that movie, which is that we belong dead. This is a world for living people, loving people, people that are still people, and the world is better off without them. Chucky stabs her, it has a complete disregard for her, get off my knife. And Tiffany is, as far as we know at this point, she's killed. Jesse then uses this as an opportunity to knock Chucky into the grave. Chucky is absolutely terrified that he's in the grave with his body. And while this is happening, there's a character who we haven't really spoken about, but there's a detective who has been on the news, basically, is just a sort of background character that has existed to give updates on the police investigation into the situation. Lieutenant Preston. And he arrives, and Jade, he pulls a gun out in shock. Jade steals his gun and shoots Chucky through the chest, as we know from previous films that shooting him through the heart is what kills him. And he has a really great line where he says, "I'll come back. I always come back, but dying's always such a bitch." Is that right? Something like that?
That sounds right. Yeah.
And again, it's another one of those moments that just has a sort of melancholic element to it. That he's sort of as bad doomed to repeat this. There's this sort of "I always come back," which is triumphant, but this is this sucks. So Chucky dies. It's maybe not the most elaborate death that Chucky has had up until this point. In fact, how did that sort of strike you? Because, up until this point, you've been used to quite a sort of set-piece death for Chucky, and it's quite low-key as far as Chucky death goes.
Yeah, I do think that every time I think this might be an implication that he's dead, I'm usually going, no, this is probably not it. So the fact that the shooting whilst he was in the actual... Well, he was essentially like in the grave, right? And then when he dies, he like falls on top of his own body.
Yes.
Because I knew that, in terms of the lore, that shooting him through the heart would kill him, it still seemed like, I don't know, why wasn't he like hacked up a little bit? Or, I guess I kind of thought there was going to be a little bit more, in the same way that I was thinking Tiffany can't be gone yet. And I know that like it must have been really traumatic for her because she hasn't gone through all the crazy stuff that Chucky has up until this point. So his kind of like mental endurance for, I don't even know if he feels pain, I suppose.
Yes,
in a way. But like he can endure a lot.
The longer he's in the dolls each time, isn't it? I guess every time he comes back, the longer he's in the doll, the more pain.
That's right. That's right. He almost has like a level of kind of invincibility to start with, as he's kind of more doll than human, and then he sort of becomes more human as he stays locked in. Yeah. Okay. So he still has the sensation of all these deaths. So he's probably kind of used to it in a way, I suppose. Even though he does say dying's a bitch. But like Tiffany experiencing this for the first time must have been absolutely horrible. I mean, don't imagine, but like the idea of being like cooked in an oven is horrifying. And then also being alive afterwards is, she probably didn't think that she was going to come back from that. And she's more or less screaming is most of her dialogue. Like from that point onwards, there's a couple of great lines that she says, obviously to kind of wrap everything up. But like there's a lot of trauma, I'd imagine, around that for her.
Yeah. I think there's so much of it, as you say, in these final moments of this film where with the interactions with Tiffany, which are genuinely sad, and you do get a sense of the sort of mess that she's got herself in, and the acknowledgement that what she thought they were together, or who he was for sure, is just it's been 10 years of her building up this person in her head, and now he's here and he's just the same sort of shitty, repulsive human being that he was back then, really. And it makes her story really, really sad. But yeah, it is a more sort of stark series of deaths here, I think, because I guess they're more rounded characters in this film than in the previous films, particularly for Chucky. He isn't, I think in Child's Play 3 he did feel like this sort of one-liner wisecracking sort of baddie, and here he's a character, he's a proper character here, as bad as he is. So after they've both died, they're sort of, we needed the lieutenant to see this so that Jesse and Jay don't go off and immediately get arrested and put on trial for these murders, and he says, gets on the radio, they didn't do it, they leave, and then he walks to the body of Tiffany and sort of pokes it curiously, and Tiffany sort of screams back to life, immediately goes into what is immediately quite clear straight away is labor, and gives birth to a sort of monstrous offspring which attacks the lieutenant as the credits roll straight away. It's just there we go. How was that moment for you?
That was so great. I think because I knew that there was a film called Seed of Chucky, I was like, okay, I think this is probably where this is going, but I didn't think it would be a straight, like it'd be like right at the end before I'll roll credits. I thought it might be I don't know, it was just a title for something else later, and I didn't actually know where it sits release-wise or chronologically, so I didn't even know that it was. I don't know. I still don't know if it's the one that comes straight after this, but I presume it probably is.
It is.
Yeah. It was great, and also like the child, the doll, the monster that comes out of her has these like horrible little sharp teeth. As he comes out, he's just like, Wah! That was horrifying as well, and he just sort of like leaps towards the camera, and that's more or less the one of the last things you see. It's terrifying.
The final shot sort of got this sort of grindhousey sort of exploitation-y look to it, hasn't it? It looks like it's going to, turn into something really grisly. And then we are left with the end credits, and Bride of Chucky is over. As I say, I think the film did reasonably well. I think it's the highest grossing Child's Play film to date. I don't know whether that includes the remake or whether it's adjusted for inflation, but I think it's the one that took the most money. As I say, it's sort of muted critical response. People, some people liked it, some people didn't like it, but not sort of no one appeared particularly wowed by it. But it is a film that, as time has gone on, all of both this one and the following film, Seed of Chucky, as they've gone on, they have amassed this huge sort of following of, I think, people that, particularly for Bride of Chucky, love it just as much as even the second film. And for me personally, it feels like a more personal film for me to love. I love, I spoke in Child's Play 2 how much I think that's a great film, but this one for me is where Chucky really comes into his own as a character, as a and starts to do its own thing, and it's just pedal to the metal from here on. Really, we go to some weird, wonderful place. If you think this one is a turn in a new direction, Seed of Chucky is wild. This is where we really start to look at some really interesting topics, but also just be crazy and bizarre, and we got fun times ahead.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We're not gonna, I think we'll probably do our, when we get after Cult of Chucky in 3 films time, I imagine we probably will share our sort of rankings of films with each other.
Yeah, I'm up for that
on the show. But I don't think it'll be any surprise if this one is coming out somewhere near the top or on top. Really, it's really well done. It's well made. It's funny. It's it has a couple of creepy moments, but I don't think that's the main draw of it. Really, the 2 characters, Chucky and Tiffany, are amazing. Jennifer Tilly is the best addition that the series ever has. She's just wonderful, and maybe you'll see more of her as time goes on, but who am I to say? I'm just a guy who doesn't know the difference between a suitcase and a trunk, but knows the sixth Halloween film is The Curse of Michael Myers, right? So it's what do I know, really?
Look, we can't be good at everything. That's how I feel.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. I've just taken up so much room in one particular place of mine. I've got no stuff for actually helpful things. So.
That's why there's 2 of us.
This is it. And I provide something. So we that is Bride of Chucky. Obviously, we hope you've had a really, really good time with us today, listening to us talk about it. We will be back in a couple of weeks with Seed of Chucky, where things are going to get odd, and we have a cameo from John Waters, which is amazing, which is worth your ticket price, as is. Cool. Just before we finish up for the day, as we spoke about games at the beginning of the episode, we've started doing at the end of the episode just a little bit of a review section. I think it's been a very, very busy week for both of us, and also we haven't had sort of our usual 2 weeks in between episodes to talk about stuff. But I did just want to bring up time back into the beginning of the show, a very quick game review, which is Returnal. Not Returnal, that's a different game. Reanimal, which is by Tarsier Games. They are the production company that made Little Nightmares 1 and 2. Little Nightmares 3 obviously came out, I think, late last year, but from Supermassive Games, and I haven't played that. But they're the creators of Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology, which are, and Until Dawn is a masterpiece. The Dark Pictures are at least good, and some of them are better than others. But this is really the spiritual successor to Little Nightmares 1 and 2. It's a co-op game now, set in a world that somehow makes the Little Nightmares world seem sort of fun and fluffy. It's a really, really dark universe this game takes place in. You play as 2 characters as they navigate through this sort of dark, twisted world, which will seem both familiar and new if you've played the previous games. This is an extraordinary exercise in atmosphere. It's incredibly bleak without ever feeling so overbearing you don't want to play. It's darker, it's grimmer. It's got a runtime of around, I think we finished it in just under 5 hours, but I think some people have taken a little bit longer. That sounds quite short, but really with this sort of world and this kind of atmosphere, I think it's best if you keep things people wanting more, really. I've thought about it a lot since playing it. I think that the plot and the narrative incredibly enigmatic and mysterious. There's some sort of folk horror in there. There's body horror in there. There's this strange sort of ritual element. There's hints at, without any spoilers, sort of the things that children, the terrible things that children can do to each other. It's a really, really excellent game. I can't recommend it enough. And you can, if you've got an evening free, you can play it in an evening. I love Little Nightmares 1 and 2, and this is probably even better than both of those. So I'd recommend it if you're looking for something to play before Resident Evil 9 comes out next week. So there we are.
That sounds great.
Lovely. Well, Sarah, would you be kind enough to tell everyone where they can find us, where they can find the other episodes, and how to get in contact with us, please?
Yes, absolutely. So in order to watch this podcast, if you're listening right now, you're probably on either YouTube or on our website, uncannycollective.co.uk, or you might be listening or watching on Spotify. We're also available in audio only or wherever you get your podcasts, basically. So super easy to find us. We are under our main anthology podcast name, though, if you are looking for us. So The Darkness Between Us. You can also check out all the previous stories that we have on there as well. Have a listen to some of the stuff that we've got going on there. And future episodes of Into the Darkness will also be on all of those platforms. And try and get in touch with us. That'd be great. I say try. You probably can. It'll be super easy. If you head over to Do or Do Not. There is no try. Star Wars. If you go to Instagram, you should find us under Uncanny, I think it's _collective for Instagram, or you can find either one of us. Our names will be, I think it's this side,
me there,
or it might be that side, who knows,
you over there,
but I'll put it in. It's in there throughout the entirety of the episode if you're watching the video podcast, but I'm at Sarah Lynham or at Uncanny Steve if you're looking for Steve. We'd love to hear what you think about the podcast. Comment, get in touch with us directly, share, tell your friends. Let us know what you think, and tell us what your favourite Child's Play / Chucky franchise film is so far.
Absolutely. And also get in contact with other films or franchises or games or music you'd like us to check out. We're totally up for requests, and there's absolutely nothing to stop us, even if it's not a full episode. If there's something that we think could be a really good idea, we'll do a little video about it and say thank you in the video for suggesting it. So let us know if there's anything you'd like us to talk about. Thank you all so much for joining us. We are 4 down and 3 to go on the Child's Play Chucky franchise. In 2 weeks, we will be back with Seed of Chucky. And then is it a week after that we have the next Friday the 13th?
I think so. I don't have a calendar in front of me now, but that does sound right.
Yeah, I think I'm right on that one. It's 4 weeks-ish. No, it's exactly 4 weeks. It's February. It's exactly 4 weeks since the last one. Thank you all for joining us. Have a brilliant fortnight until we see you again. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you as Chucky's offspring reveals itself in the next film. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.